Everyone expected a war. When Marcus Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Tech, served his wife divorce papers to marry the heiress of a media empire. The tabloids sharpened their claws. They waited for the screaming matches, the asset freezing the public breakdown. But Elena didn't scream. She didn't hire a shark lawyer. She didn't even cry. She simply signed the papers, left her wedding ring on the mahogany table, and vanished into the night. Marcus thought he had won. He thought she was weak. He had no idea that her silence wasn't a surrender, it was a countdown. And when he finally saw her again 6 months later at the world's most exclusive secret gala, he realized too late he hadn't just divorced his wife. He had divorced the woman who secretly owned him. The fountain pen scratched against the heavy parchment, the sound distinct and jarring in the silent conference room. It was the only noise in the penthouse office of Carter Hale & Associates on Wall Street. Marcus Sterling sat back in his Eames leather chair checking his Rolex. He tried to suppress the smug smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Across the table sat Elena, his wife of 7 years. She looked smaller than usual, wrapped in a simple beige trench coat that had seen better days, her brown hair pulled back in a severe, practical bun. "Are you sure you understand the terms, Mrs. Sterling?" Marcus's lawyer, a man named Silas who charged $1,200 an hour, peered over his spectacles. "By signing this, you are waiving your right to the Sterling Tech shares. You are accepting the lump sum payout of $500,000, which is, frankly, generous, given the prenuptial agreement." Generous. Sterling Tech was currently valued at $4 billion. $500,000 was less than the cost of the car waiting for Marcus downstairs. Marcus watched her closely. He braced himself for the outburst. He had prepared for this moment for months, rehearsing his arguments. "We've grown apart, Elena. I need a partner who understands the global stage. You're happier in the shadows." He had even prepared a PR strategy to paint her as emotionally unstable if she decided to fight. Elena looked up. Her eyes were dry. "I understand the terms," she said softly. "Elena," Marcus said, his voice dripping with faux sympathy, "you don't have to rush. If you need a moment to process—" "I don't," she interrupted. Her voice wasn't angry. It was indifferent. She leaned forward and signed her name. Elena Vance. She had already dropped his name. Marcus blinked. That was it. No screaming about the 7 years she spent supporting him while he built his code in a garage. No mentioning the nights she worked double shifts as a paralegal so he wouldn't have to take a day job. She capped the pen and placed it gently on the table. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the 3-carat diamond ring he had bought her after his Series B funding round. It clattered onto the glass table. "Goodbye, Marcus," she said. She stood up and walked to the door. "Elena, wait." Marcus stood up, confused by his own victory. It felt too easy. "Where are you going? Do you have a place to stay? I can have my driver take you to the St. Regis for a few nights until—" She paused with her hand on the doorknob, looking back at him. For a second, Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. She didn't look like the woman who baked sourdough bread and proofread his emails. She looked like a stranger. "Don't worry about me, Marcus," she said. "Enjoy the IPO. I hope it's everything you sacrificed for." The door clicked shut. Marcus sat back down, letting out a breath he didn't know he was holding. "Well," Silas laughed nervously, gathering the papers. "That was the easiest high-net-worth divorce I've ever handled. She didn't even ask for the house in the Hamptons." "She knows she couldn't win," Marcus said, his confidence returning. He stood up, buttoning his Tom Ford suit jacket. "She's a simple woman, Silas. She wants a simple life. She knows she doesn't belong in my world anymore." He walked to the window, looking down at the rainy streets of Manhattan. He saw a small figure in a beige coat step out of the building and disappear into the crowd. "Good riddance," he whispered. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "It's done, Serena?" he said, his voice changing to a purr. "I'm a free man." On the other end, Serena van der Hoeven, the daughter of a Dutch media mogul and currently the it girl of the New York social scene, laughed. "Finally, Daddy is securing the invite to the Obsidian Gala in Zurich. We need to make our debut as a power couple there. It's strictly billionaires only. I'll be there, Marcus promised. I'm one of them now. He had no idea that the woman he just discarded was the only reason he had ever been allowed in the room in the first place. 3 months passed. For Marcus, Sterling life was a blur of flashbulbs, ribbon cuttings, and champagne. With Elena gone, he was free to mold his image into the titan of industry he believed he was. He was dating Serena Vanderhoven, a match that the Wall Street Journal called a merger of dynasty and innovation. Sterling Tech's stock was soaring. He was on the cover of Forbes. He was living the dream. Yet strange things began to happen in the margins of his life. Small inconveniences that began to pile up. It started with his schedule. Elena used to manage his private calendar, balancing his meetings with an intuitive grace. Now his new team of 3 executive assistants seemed constantly overwhelmed. He missed a crucial meeting with the Japanese regulators because of a time zone error. Then it was the networking. I don't understand, Marcus fumed, pacing around his office while Serena lounged on the sofa scrolling through Instagram. Why hasn't Lord Harrington returned my calls? We were supposed to discuss the London expansion. Maybe he's just busy, darling, Serena said, not looking up. Let's go to St. Bart's this weekend. I can't go to St. Bart's. I need the London deal to close before Q3 or the stock takes a hit. Marcus didn't mention that Lord Harrington had always had a soft spot for Elena. They used to discuss obscure 18th century literature during boring fundraisers. Marcus had assumed Harrington tolerated Elena to get to him. He was beginning to suspect it might have been the other way around. But the biggest blow came from the Weber Group. The Weber Group was a shadowy private equity firm based in Zurich. They were the kingmakers. If Weber backed you, you became a global institution. If they ignored you, you remained a local player. Marcus had been courting them for 2 years. Mr. Sterling. His CFO, David, walked into the office, his face pale. What is it, David? Did we get the meeting with Weber? No, David said, placing a letter on the desk. They pulled their interest. What? Marcus snatched the letter. They can't pull it. We were in final due diligence. What reason did they give? They said... David hesitated. They said the risk profile regarding key personnel stability has changed. Personnel stability. I'm the CEO. I'm still here, Marcus shouted. They didn't elaborate. They just cut us off. Overnight. Marcus crumbled the letter. It's a negotiation tactic. They want a better price. Get me a ticket to the Obsidian Gala. I know the head of the Weber Group, Elias Thorne, will be there. I'll corner him personally. Serena perked up. The Obsidian Gala, Daddy finally got us the invites this morning. It was harder than usual. Apparently the guest list has been curated by a new chairwoman this year, and she's ruthless. Perfect, Marcus sneered. I deal with ruthless people every day. We're going to Zurich. While Marcus scrambled to save his empire, nobody bothered to ask where Elena was. She had vanished completely. Her social media, which was barely active to begin with, was deleted. Her phone number was disconnected. She hadn't cashed the $500,000 check. Marcus assumed she had moved back to her parents' small farm in Ohio, licking her wounds. He was wrong. 4,000 miles away in a glass-walled chalet overlooking the frozen beauty of the Swiss Alps, a woman stood on a balcony. She wore a silk robe worth more than Marcus's car. A man approached her from behind, handing her a cup of espresso. He was older, distinguished, with silver hair and eyes that had seen everything. This was Julian Thorne, the patriarch of the family that owned the Weber Group. He's panicking, Julian said, his voice amused. He's trying to force a meeting with my son Elias. The woman turned around. It was Elena, but the severe bun was gone, replaced by loose cascading waves. Her posture wasn't hunched and apologetic. It was regal. Let him panic, Elena said, taking the espresso. He thinks he built Sterling Tech alone, Julian. He thinks his code is what sold the company. He never realized, Julian chuckled, that the code was mediocre. It was the connections that made it valuable. Connections you handed him on a silver platter. I was a good wife, Elena said, her eyes cold. I ghost-wrote his speeches. I charmed the investors he offended. I whispered the right strategies in his ear at night and let him believe they were his ideas in the morning. I made him. And he discarded you like a used napkin, Julian noted. Are you ready for the gala? I've been ready for 7 years, Elena said. He's bringing the Vanderhoven girl, Julian warned. Elena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Good. She loves a show. I'd hate for her to be bored. You know, Elena, Julian leaned against the railing. When you came to me 5 years ago to fix that crisis with the European Union, I knew you were brilliant. But I never understood why you stayed with him. I loved him, she admitted simply. I thought he was just ambitious, not cruel. I thought we were a team. I was the architect, he was the face. And now? Elena took a sip of the coffee, looking out at the snowy peaks. Now I'm just the architect, and I've decided to condemn the building. The air in Zurich was sharp enough to cut glass. At the base of the Alps, the private road leading up to the Château de Nuit, a centuries-old fortress converted into the world's most secure event venue, was lined with black SUVs. Not just any SUVs, but bulletproof Maybachs and armored Range Rovers with diplomatic plates. Marcus Sterling adjusted his bow tie for the 10th time. His reflection in the darkened window of his hired limousine stared back at him, pale, sweaty, and terrified. "Stop fidgeting, Marcus," Serena snapped. She was applying a layer of ruby-red lipstick in the vanity mirror. She wore a dress made of diamonds and nothing else, a garment that had cost more than the average American home. "You look like you're about to be audited. This is a party. Smile." "It's not a party, Serena," Marcus hissed, checking his phone. Still no reply from his frantic emails to the Weber Group. "It's a battlefield. If I don't secure Elias Thorne's funding tonight, the Q3 earnings call next week will be a bloodbath. Sterling Tech is bleeding cash." "You're the great Marcus Sterling." Serena rolled her eyes, snapping her compact shut. "You always win. Now let's go. The paparazzi are waiting." But when the car door opened, there were no paparazzi. That was the first shock. The Obsidian Gala had a strict media blackout. Phones were confiscated at the gate. There were no flashing lights, no screaming fans, no red carpet interviews. There was only silence, heavy and intimidating. Marcus stepped out onto the black carpet, offering his hand to Serena. The entrance was flanked by guards who looked more like Special Forces operatives than bouncers. "Name?" the head of security asked. He held a tablet that seemed to scan Marcus's biometric data before he even spoke. "Marcus Sterling, CEO of Sterling Tech, and Serena Vanderhoven." The guard scrolled. And scrolled. Marcus felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back despite the freezing temperature. "Is there a problem? We were invited by—" "Ah, yes," the guard said, his tone flat. "Mr. Sterling, you are in the West Wing overflow." Marcus froze. "Overflow? There must be a mistake. I'm a keynote-level guest. I'm supposed to be at the head table." "The head table is reserved for platinum members and the chairwoman's personal guests," the guard said, his eyes bored. "You are silver tier. West Wing. Please move along. You're holding up the Prime Minister of Italy." Serena gasped, clutching Marcus's arm. "Overflow, Marcus, this is humiliating. I can't be seen in the overflow." "Shut up," Marcus whispered, his face burning. He grabbed her elbow and steered her inside. "It's a clerical error. I'll fix it when I find Elias." Inside the chateau was a masterclass in intimidation. The walls were draped in black velvet. The chandeliers dripped with black crystals. The guests wore masks, elaborate Venetian-style masks that obscured their identities. This was the tradition of the Obsidian Gala. True power has no face. Marcus grabbed 2 masks from a silver tray, a lion for him, a peacock for Serena. "Put this on," he ordered. "It ruins my contour," she whined. "Put it on." As they moved through the ballroom, Marcus felt small. He recognized the shoes, the watches, the posture of the people around him. He saw the CEO of the world's largest oil company chatting with a tech mogul from Silicon Valley. He saw royalty, and they all seemed to know something he didn't. The room was buzzing with a singular rumor. Marcus caught snippets of conversation as he pushed through the crowd hunting for Elias Thorne. "Have you met her yet? The new chairwoman? Julian Thorne stepped down last month, gave total control to her. They say she's the one who orchestrated the merger between Omni and Zenith. A ghost." Marcus ignored the gossip. He spotted him. Elias Thorne was standing near the ice sculpture laughing with a man who looked suspiciously like the U.S. Secretary of Treasury. Elias was young, sharp, and cruel, the heir to the Weber Empire. "Stay here," Marcus told Serena. "And for God's sake, don't drink too much." Marcus took a deep breath, straightened his spine, and approached the most powerful man in the room. He was Marcus Sterling. He was a visionary. He could charm anyone. "Elias," Marcus boomed, feigning a casual confidence. "So good to see you. I assume you got my messages. We need to clear up that misunderstanding about the personnel risk." Elias Thorne stopped laughing. He turned slowly, his eyes visible through a mask of a silver wolf. He looked at Marcus, not with anger, but with mild annoyance, like one looks at a fly. "Marcus," Elias said, his voice cool. "This is a social event. We don't discuss business." "I understand." Marcus pressed, stepping closer, invading Elias's space. "But pulling the funding abruptly, it's unprofessional, Elias. Sterling Tech is the future. You're leaving billions on the table." The conversation around them stopped. People were watching. Elias sighed. He took a sip of his champagne. "I didn't pull the funding, Marcus." Marcus blinked. "What?" "But the letter—" David said. "I didn't pull it," Elias repeated. "I don't make those decisions anymore. My father retired. The board appointed a new managing partner. She reviewed your file personally." "She—" Marcus frowned. "Who is she? I'll talk to her. I can sell this to anyone. Just point me in her direction." Elias smiled. It was a shark's smile. "Oh, you don't need me to point her out, Marcus. Everyone is waiting for her entrance." At that moment, the lights in the massive ballroom dimmed. The chatter died instantly. A spotlight hit the top of the grand staircase. "Ladies and gentlemen," a voice announced over the speakers, "please welcome the chairwoman of the Obsidian Council and the new majority partner of the Weber Group." Marcus looked up, ready to charm this new woman, ready to flash his smile and win his money back. A woman stepped into the light. She wore a gown of midnight blue silk that seemed to flow like liquid water. It was backless, elegant, and severe. She wore no mask. Her face was bare to the world. Marcus felt his heart stop. The champagne glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The sound echoed in the silence, but he didn't hear it. He knew that face. He knew the curve of that jaw. He knew the way she held her head. It was Elena. But it wasn't the Elena who wore oversized sweaters and made him herbal tea. It wasn't the Elena who quietly took notes in the corner of his office. This woman radiated a cold, terrifying power that sucked the air out of the room. "No," Marcus whispered, stumbling back. "That's impossible." Beside him, Serena squinted. Isn't that your mousy ex-wife?" Elena began to descend the stairs. She didn't look down. She looked straight ahead, and as she reached the bottom step, her eyes locked onto Marcus. She smiled. And for the first time in his life, Marcus Sterling was truly afraid. The ballroom was a sea of whispers, but in Marcus's ears there was only a high-pitched ringing. He watched as the crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. Billionaires bowed their heads. Rivals stepped aside. Elena Vance moved through the room with the grace of a predator. "Marcus, do something," Serena hissed, digging her nails into his arm. "She's coming over here. Why is she coming over here? She looks expensive." Marcus couldn't move. His brain was trying to reconcile the two versions of his life. Elena is a paralegal. She's a nobody. I gave her $500,000 to go away. Elena stopped 3 feet in front of him. She was flanked by Elias Thorne on one side and the head of Swiss security on the other. "Hello, Marcus," she said. Her voice was smooth, amplified by the acoustics of the room, yet intimate. "I see you made it to the West Wing. The overflow suits you." "Elena," Marcus choked out. "What is this? How are you? How am I the majority partner of the firm that holds your debt?" She finished for him. She took a glass of sparkling water from a passing waiter. "It's a long story. But then again, you never really asked about my day, did you?" You set me up," Marcus accused, his voice rising, drawing more attention. "You're the one who killed the deal. This is revenge. It's petty, vindictive revenge because I left you." A hush fell over the immediate circle. Accusing the chairwoman of pettiness at the Obsidian Gala was social suicide. Elena didn't get angry. She laughed. It was a soft, dry sound. "Revenge." She shook her head. "Marcus, don't flatter yourself. This isn't emotional. It's strictly business." She snapped her fingers. Elias Thorne handed her a tablet. "You see," Elena said, swiping through a document, "when the Weber Group considers an investment, we look at the keyman clause. We bet on the leader. And for 7 years, the market believed you were the genius behind Sterling Tech." She took a step closer. The scent of her perfume, something rare and woody, hit him. It was the same perfume she wore on their first date 10 years ago. "But we ran an audit, Marcus. A forensic audit of your life." She turned the tablet around so he could see. It wasn't financial charts. It was a timeline of every major breakthrough Sterling Tech had made in the last decade. The predictive algorithm in 2018, Elena pointed to the screen. "You were stuck on the syntax for 3 weeks. I fixed the logic loop while you were sleeping. I wrote the patch." Marcus turned pale. You were just proofreading." "The merger with Orion Systems in 2020. She swiped. "You wanted to play hardball. I told you to offer the stock swap. I drafted the email. You just hit send. The crisis management during the data leak." She swiped again. "I wrote the apology speech. I choreographed the media response. I saved your stock price." Elena handed the tablet back to Elias. She looked at Marcus with pity. "The Weber Group didn't pull the funding because I'm your ex-wife, Marcus. We pulled the funding because we realized that the genius of Sterling Tech wasn't the CEO." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "The asset left the building 3 months ago, with a $500,000 check." Marcus felt the room spinning. He looked around. The faces of the elite were no longer indifferent. They were laughing. Not loudly, but with their eyes. They knew. "You're lying," Marcus snarled, his ego fracturing. "I built that company. I am Sterling Tech." "Are you?" Elena asked coolly. "Then tell me, Marcus, how is the Project Ether code coming along? Since I left, the development team has reported a 40% drop in productivity. And the new interface, it's buggy, clunky. It's a temporary setback." "It's a collapse," Elena corrected. "And as of this morning, the Weber Group has decided to short your stock. We're betting against you, Marcus." Serena van der Hoven, sensing the sinking ship, physically let go of Marcus's arm. She took a subtle step away from him. "Elena," Marcus said, his voice cracking. He realized suddenly that he wasn't fighting for his reputation anymore. He was fighting for his life. "Elena, please. We can talk about this privately. I made a mistake. Maybe we can find a way to work together. For old time's sake." It was a desperate, pathetic pivot. The beggar pleading with the queen. Elena looked at him for a long moment. For a split second, Marcus saw a flicker of the woman who used to love him. "There is one way," Elena said softly. Marcus exhaled hope, rushing back. "Name it. Anything. I'll give you a board seat. I'll give you equity." "I don't want equity, Marcus. I already have money." She leaned in close, so only he could hear. "I want the truth." "The truth." "Admit it," she whispered. "Admit to everyone here that you didn't build it alone. Admit that you stood on my shoulders to touch the sky." Marcus looked at the crowd. He looked at the Secretary of the Treasury. He looked at the tech moguls. If he admitted that his wife was the brains behind the operation, his stock would tank anyway. His ego would be obliterated. He would be a laughingstock. He stiffened. The arrogance returned a shield against the shame. "I built that company," Marcus said through gritted teeth. "I am the visionary. You were just a secretary with a ring." Elena pulled back. The warmth vanished from her eyes instantly. The trap had snapped shut. "Very well," she said, turning her back on him. "Elias, have security escort Mr. Sterling out. He doesn't meet the accreditation standards for this gathering." "Wait!" Marcus shouted as two massive guards grabbed his arms. "You can't do this. I'm Marcus Sterling." "Not anymore," Elena said, not looking back. "Now you're just a liability." As Marcus was dragged toward the exit, kicking and screaming like a child, Serena van der Hoven didn't follow him. She stayed. Marcus watched helplessly as Serena walked up to Elena. "Mrs. Sterling, or is it Ms. Vance?" Serena asked, her voice dripping with sudden admiration. "I love your dress. Is it custom?" Elena smiled at the girl who had stolen her husband. "It is. Would you like a glass of champagne, Serena? Let's discuss your father's media empire. I think it's time for new management there, too." The heavy doors slammed shut, leaving Marcus Sterling alone in the cold Swiss snow. But the story wasn't over. Elena had broken him socially and financially. But Marcus Sterling was a cornered animal. And cornered animals bite. As he shivered in the dark watching the warm glow of the castle where his ex-wife held court, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a burner phone. He dialed a number he had sworn never to use. "It's me," Marcus said, his voice trembling with rage. "Initiate the scorched earth protocol. If I can't have the company, she can't have it either." The cold of the Swiss night bit through Marcus's tuxedo, but the adrenaline coursing through his veins kept him warm. He sat in the back of a rental car, a Skoda, the only thing available at this hour without a reservation, parked in a shadowy alley 3 miles from the Château de Neuilly. His hands shook as he held the burner phone. The screen cast a ghostly blue light on his face, highlighting the sweat on his brow. "Are you sure you want to do this, Mr. Sterling?" The voice on the other end was distorted, synthesized to sound metallic. It was a contact he had kept in his back pocket for years, a dark web contractor known only as Cypher. "Once I execute the script, there is no undo button. The Project Ether source code will be corrupted. The backups will be wiped. Sterling Tech will effectively be a hollow shell by market open." "Do it," Marcus hissed. "If she thinks she can steal my company, she can inherit a graveyard. Burn it all down." "My fee has doubled," Cypher said, "given the risk." "Transferring it now." Marcus frantically tapped on his main phone, moving funds from an offshore account in the Caymans, money he had siphoned off during the IPO, money Elena didn't know about. Or so he thought. $2 million. Sent. Now push the button. Payment received. Executing scorched earth in T-10 seconds. Marcus leaned back against the headrest, a twisted smile forming on his lips. He watched the digital clock on the dashboard. 10, 9, 8. He imagined the chaos at Sterling Tech headquarters in Palo Alto, the red lights flashing, the servers melting down, the panic on David's face. 3, 2, 1. "Done," Cypher said. "The payload is delivered. The database is encrypting. Goodbye, Mr. Sterling." The line went dead. Marcus threw the burner phone out the window. It shattered on the pavement. "Checkmate, Elena," he whispered. "Let's see you govern a company that doesn't exist." Inside the Château de Neuilly, the mood was electric. Elena stood in the center of the Obsidian Council's private lounge, a glass of vintage Pinot Noir in her hand. She was currently discussing the liquidity crisis in Asian markets with the CEO of a major sovereign wealth fund. Suddenly, Elias Thorne approached her. His face was uncharacteristically tense. He held a secure tablet. "Elena," he interrupted, his voice low. "We have a situation. The monitors at Sterling Tech just lit up like a Christmas tree." Elena didn't flinch. She took a slow sip of her wine. "Is it the ether drive?" Elias blinked, surprised by her calm. "Yes. Someone bypassed the firewall using an executive override. They launched a polymorphic virus. It's wiping the core code. The engineers in California are locked out. Elena, the asset, is destroying itself. We're losing billions by the second." The sovereign wealth CEO looked at Elena with concern. "Ms. Vance, if your flagship acquisition is under cyber attack, perhaps we should reschedule." Elena set her glass down on a marble coaster. She smoothed the silk of her dress. "No need to reschedule," she said, her voice steady. "Elias, bring up the command terminal on the main screen." "Here now." "Do it." Elias tapped the screen, and the large monitor on the wall previously displaying abstract art switched to a live feed of the Sterling Tech server status. Lines of red code were cascading down the screen. System critical. Deletion imminent. The room went silent. The billionaires watched, horrified. This was the nightmare scenario: corporate sabotage in real time. "He actually did it," Elena murmured almost sadly. "I hoped he would have more dignity than this." "Who?" Elias asked. "Marcus," Elena said. "He thinks he's destroying the company." She walked up to the screen. She reached into her clutch and pulled out not a phone but a small titanium USB key. She handed it to Elias. "Plug this in." Elias inserted the key into the console. "Execute command mirror trap," Elena ordered. Elias typed it in. On the screen, the cascading red code suddenly froze. The text blinked once, then turned bright green. "Threat isolated. Origin traced. Biometric signature confirmed. M. Sterling." The room gasped. "You see?" Elena turned to the room, addressing the stunned audience of power players. Marcus Sterling was a decent coder, but he was lazy. He reused the same backdoor for 7 years because he liked to spy on his employees. "When I rewrote the system architecture 3 years ago, I didn't close the back door." She smiled a cold, dangerous smile. "I moved it. I redirected it to a sandbox, a fake server. He isn't deleting the company data. He's deleting a dummy file I labeled Do Not Touch. And in doing so, he just digitally signed a confession to corporate espionage and malicious destruction of property." Elias stared at the screen. "You baited him." "I knew that when he felt powerless he would try to break his toys," Elena said. "I just made sure the only thing he broke was his freedom." She turned to the head of security. "Send the data logs to the FBI and the SEC and notify the Swiss police. I believe there is a man in a silver Skoda parked on Route 4 who is a flight risk." The downfall of Marcus Sterling was not a slow burn. It was a free fall. It began 20 minutes after the attack. Marcus was still in the rental car scrolling through Twitter on his main phone, waiting for the news to break. He was waiting for the headline, "Sterling Tech goes dark." Instead, a notification popped up from Bloomberg. "Breaking: Sterling Tech stock jumps 12%. After hours following announcement of new unbreakable cybersecurity protocol." "What?" Marcus stared at the screen. "That's impossible." He refreshed the page. "Update: Board of Directors votes to remove Marcus Sterling as CEO, immediately, citing gross misconduct. Former wife and majority stakeholder Elena Vance named interim chairwoman." "No!" Marcus slammed his hand against the steering wheel. "She's lying. The code is gone. I deleted it." His phone rang. It was Serena. "Finally!" Marcus answered, breathless. "Serena, listen, we need to get to the jet. We're going to the Maldives. Non-extradition. Pack your bags." "Marcus." Serena's voice was icy. "I'm not going to the Maldives." "What?" "Don't be stupid. When the market opens, it's going to be chaos. We need to leave." There is no we, Marcus, Serena said. I just saw the data logs. Elena projected them in the ballroom. Everyone saw Marcus. Everyone. The CEO of BlackRock. The VP of Google. They saw you try to nuke your own company. It was a strategy, Marcus screamed. It was scorched earth. It was suicide, Serena corrected. And I don't date criminals. I've already issued a statement to Vanity Fair saying I was unaware of your mental instability. I'm distancing myself, Marcus. Don't call me again. The line went dead. Marcus sat in the silence of the alley. He felt a sudden crushing weight in his chest. He checked his bank app to transfer more funds for a pilot. Access denied. Account frozen by order of Department of Justice. No, no, no. He tried his credit cards. All declined. He was a billionaire on paper, but in reality he didn't have enough cash to buy a burger. Blue lights flashed in the rearview mirror. Marcus looked up. A Swiss police cruiser had blocked the entrance to the alley. 2 officers stepped out, hands on their holsters. Marcus Sterling, one shouted in accented English. Step out of the vehicle with your hands in the air. For a moment Marcus considered locking the doors. He considered ramming the cruiser. But then he looked at his reflection in the rearview mirror. The lion mask he had worn earlier was sitting on the passenger seat mocking him. He wasn't a lion. He was just a man who had underestimated the woman who built him. He opened the door and stepped out into the snow, raising his hands. As the cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, he looked up at the distant peak where the Chateau de Nuit glowed like a star. The interrogation room in the Federal Detention Center in New York was gray and smelled of stale coffee. It was a far cry from the penthouse office with the mahogany table. Marcus sat in an orange jumpsuit. He looked 10 years older. He hadn't shaved, and the dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights. The door opened. Marcus looked up, expecting his court-appointed lawyer. Silas, his expensive attorney, had dropped him the moment the check bounced. It wasn't a lawyer. It was Elena. She wore a simple white suit, sharp and immaculate. She carried no bag, no files, just herself. She sat down across from him. The guard nodded to her and stepped outside, leaving them alone. You look terrible, Marcus, she said quietly. You came to gloat, Marcus rasped. Go ahead, enjoy it, you won. I didn't come to gloat, Elena said. I came to bring you this. She slid a piece of paper across the metal table. Marcus looked at it. It was a legal document. Drop of charges. He looked up, confused. What is this? I spoke to the board, Elena said, and the district attorney. I told them that the cyber attack was a stress test that went wrong. I told them you were testing the new security protocols I designed. I covered for you. Marcus stared at her, his mouth agape. Why I tried to destroy everything. Because I don't want your life to be over, Marcus, she said. I just wanted you to know who was actually in charge. She leaned forward, her eyes searching his. You see, for 7 years I loved you. I supported you. I made you feel like a king because I thought that if you felt big, you would have room in your heart for me. But you didn't. You only had room for yourself. Elena. Tears pricked Marcus's eyes. I can fix this. If you get me out, we can start over. I see it now. I see how valuable you are. Elena stood up. The softness in her face vanished, replaced by the resolve of a CEO. That's the problem, Marcus. You still think my value lies in what I can do for you. She turned to the door. The charges are dropped, but the restraining order is active. You are banned from Sterling Tech premises. You have been stripped of your shares. You have nothing left but the cash in your pocket. Elena, please. Marcus stood up, the chains on his ankles rattling. Where are you going? I have a plane to catch, she said, opening the door. I'm meeting with the Prime Minister of Japan in the morning. We're expanding. Wait, what about us? Elena looked back one last time. There is no us, Marcus. There never really was. There was just you and the woman who held the mirror. She walked out. As the heavy steel door slammed shut, Marcus looked down at the paper. She had saved him from prison, yes, but she had left him with something far worse. He was free, but he was irrelevant. He walked out of the detention center an hour later. The paparazzi were waiting, but not for him. They were rushing toward a black limousine pulling away from the curb. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, shivering in his cheap release clothes. He reached into his pocket and found a single item Elena had left for him with the guard. It was the fountain pen, the one she had used to sign the divorce papers. He uncapped it. The ink was dry. The rain in London wasn't like the rain in Manhattan. In New York, rain was an event, a dramatic sweeping downpour that cleansed the streets. In London, particularly in the gray industrial district of Shoreditch, the rain was a sentence. It was a cold, persistent mist that seeped into your bones and refused to leave. Marcus Sterling stood under the dripping yellow awning of The Grind, a cramped coffee shop that smelled of burnt beans and damp wool. He checked his watch. It was a plastic Casio digital and functional. He had sold the Patek Philippe, the one he'd worn on the cover of Forbes, to pay the final retainer for his defense team during the SEC investigation. He pulled the collar of his coat up. It was a high-quality coat, but it was 3 years old. The elbows were beginning to shine with wear. "Hey, Marcus! Hey, Earth to Sterling!" Marcus winced. He turned to see Kyle, his 22-year-old boss, waving frantically from across the street. Kyle was wearing a neon orange hoodie that read "Disrupt or Die." Kyle was the founder of Kibble, a chaotic startup attempting to gamify pet food delivery. Marcus was Kibble's strategic operations consultant. In reality, he was the guy who fixed the server crashes at 3:00 a.m. because the lead developer was too high to read the error logs. "The API is down again, man," Kyle shouted, oblivious to the people staring. "We're losing users. Fix it or you're off the equity table." "I'm on it, Kyle." Marcus muttered, his voice hoarse. "I'm just getting coffee." "Coffee is for closers." Kyle laughed at his own joke and jogged away, tapping furiously on his phone. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. He remembered when he was the one shouting. He remembered when a server crash at Sterling Tech would have mobilized a team of 50 engineers in Palo Alto. He remembered when he thought he was the sun around which the world revolved. He opened his eyes and looked up. Across the wet street dominating the facade of a glass skyscraper was a massive digital billboard. It cycled through advertisements for luxury cars and Swiss watches. Then the screen went black and bold white text appeared. "Vance Systems. The future is silent." Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. The image on the screen changed. It was a portrait of Elena. She was wearing a white suit, looking away from the camera, her profile sharp and elegant. She didn't look like a celebrity. She looked like a monarch. The headline beneath her face scrolled slowly. "The $12 billion merger. How Elena Vance rescued the tech world." Marcus stared, unable to look away. The passers-by on the street stopped too, their faces illuminated by the glow of his ex-wife's success. "God, she's terrifying," a man in a business suit whispered to his colleague standing next to Marcus. "Did you read the case study in the Financial Times?" "Yeah," the colleague replied. "She took Sterling Tech, that dying company with the crazy CEO, stripped it down and rebuilt the entire architecture in 6 months. They say she doesn't even have a board of directors anymore. She is the board." "What happened to the husband?" the first man asked. "The guy who tried to delete the company. Sterling. Oh, he's toast. Banned from holding a director seat for a decade. I heard he had a breakdown. Total burnout. He's a footnote now." A footnote. Marcus gripped his paper cup until it crumpled, hot coffee spilling over his hand. He didn't feel the burn. The physical pain was nothing compared to the agony of the truth. Elena hadn't just defeated him. She had improved him. She had taken the company he built, the company he claimed was his genius, and she had perfected it. The code he wrote was gone. The culture he built was erased. Even the name was gone. Sterling Tech was dead. Vance Systems was the future. He turned away from the billboard, shame burning his cheeks, and descended into the subway station. The darkness of the underground felt appropriate. He was a ghost now, haunting a world that had moved on without him. 4,000 miles away, the sun was setting over the private airfield in Geneva. The wind whipped across the tarmac, but inside the cabin of the Gulfstream G700, the air was still and scented with fresh orchids. Elena Vance sat in a cream-colored leather swivel chair, reviewing a contract on her tablet. Opposite her sat Elias Thorne. He looked tired, but triumphant. "The acquisition of Quantum X is complete," Elias said, pouring himself a sparkling water. "The regulators in Brussels just signed off. You now control 40% of the European cloud storage market." Elena didn't look up. She highlighted a paragraph in red. "Clause 14 is sloppy, Elias. The liability shield isn't robust enough. Have legal redraft it before we land in Tokyo." Elias chuckled, shaking his head. "You never stop, do you? Most CEOs would be popping champagne right now." "Celebration is a distraction," Elena said, finally looking up. Her eyes were clear, devoid of the fatigue that plagued most leaders. "We celebrate when the integration is finished." Elias set his glass down. His expression shifted, becoming more serious. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a physical envelope. It was thick, made of cheap stationery, and handwritten. "This came to the London office," Elias said softly. "It was forwarded to my personal courier." Elena looked at the handwriting. She knew the loop of the L and the sharp cross of the T. She had seen that handwriting on birthday cards, anniversary notes, and finally on the back of a subpoena. "Marcus," she said. It wasn't a question. "He sent it 3 days ago," Elias confirmed. "He's asking for a meeting, Elena. He claims he has a concept for a new cryptographic interface. He says he wants to show you that he's changed. He's begging for 5 minutes." Elias placed the letter on the marble table between them. "The security team ran a background check," Elias continued. "He's living in a studio apartment in East London, working for a pet app. He has no assets, no allies. He's completely broken." Elena looked at the envelope. For a second her mind flashed back to the beginning. The garage where they started. The night she held him when he was panic-stricken about payroll. The way he used to look at her before the money made him blind. She remembered the man she loved, but then she remembered the man who stood in the ballroom of the Obsidian Gala and called her a secretary. She remembered the man who tried to burn down her legacy out of spite. "He wants closure," Elias said. "Should we schedule a call, just to hear him out? It might be humane." Elena reached out and touched the corner of the envelope. She thought about the concept of mercy. For years, she had given Marcus mercy. She had covered his mistakes, soothed his ego, and hid his flaws from the world. And in return, he had tried to destroy her. She realized then that true power wasn't about punishing your enemies. It was about outgrowing them so completely that their existence no longer registered on your radar. Marcus Sterling wasn't an enemy anymore. He was just a stranger with a bad idea. "No," Elena said. She didn't pick up the letter. She didn't open it. She simply pushed it back across the table toward Elias. "Burn it," she said calmly. Elias blinked. "You don't even want to read it." "I know what it says," Elena replied, turning back to her tablet. "It says he's sorry. It says he misses me. And it says he needs money. I have already heard all 3. She swiped to the next page of the contract. "Tell him I'm busy, Elias. Tell him Vance Systems doesn't hire external consultants without a PhD in relevant fields. And tell security that if he contacts the office again to file a harassment suit." "Understood," Elias said, picking up the letter. He looked at her with a mixture of fear and awe. "You really don't feel anything, do you?" Elena looked out the window as the engines roared to life. The plane began to taxi, picking up speed. The Swiss Alps rose in the distance, majestic and cold. "I feel plenty, Elias," she said, a small, enigmatic smile playing on her lips. "I feel the market shifting. I feel the future coming. And for the first time in my life, I feel light." The jet surged forward, pressing her back into the seat. Within seconds, they were airborne, piercing through the cloud layer and rising into the eternal golden sunlight of the stratosphere. Far below, in the dark, damp tunnels of the London Underground, Marcus Sterling sat on a cracked plastic bench. He stared at his phone, waiting for a reply that would never come. The train arrived with a screech of metal on metal, a deafening noise that drowned out his thoughts. He stepped onto the crowded train, and the doors slid shut. The tunnel swallowed him whole. Above him, at 45,000 feet, Elena Vance closed her eyes and enjoyed the silence. And that is the story of Elena Vance and Marcus Sterling. It's a brutal reminder that in the game of power, the loudest voice in the room is often the weakest. Marcus thought he was the king because he wore the crown, but he never realized that Elena was the one who built the throne. When he tried to destroy her, he only succeeded in destroying the only person who ever truly had his back. Marcus ended up exactly where he started, alone in the dark, while the woman he underestimated reshaped the world. Now I have to ask you, was Elena's final silence too cruel? Should she have read that letter? Or did Marcus get exactly what he deserved? I want to see your debates in the comments. I'll be pinning the best arguments. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please destroy that like button. It helps the algorithm find more people who love drama just like us. And make sure you are subscribed with the notification bell on, because my next story is about a billionaire who left his fortune to his cat in the family war that followed. You do not want to miss it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.